Yeah, I'm Jackson. I have zero experience with carpentry.
I studied at a school for historic preservation in Boston and learned about how things were built, 250 years ago.
There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near the top. Not that I thought I was, but there's so much more to do out there.
Hello and welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. Today we are talking about whether or not the customer is always right, and really just the customer in general. So it's not a full-on, is the customer always right? So get clickbaited, but
the answer is no, by the way.
It's not. The customer is not always right. Well, let's talk about it. What does that mean?
I want to frame it a different way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So just switch it up. We'll call it something else.
The way I'd like to think about this, okay, and the way I frame it in my mind, and it is that we've got kind of four types of customers, okay? And these customers are kind of on a bell curve, okay? And so at one end, don't care how long it takes. They almost love the process so much they wish it would go on forever. Then you go with the trusting customer, okay? So we're coming up a little bit. The trusting customer is gosh, I really love what they do. I love their work. I want to just be a part of that process. They trust you for decisions. They trust you for budget. They trust you for that whole thing.
Wait, what distinguishes the two of those? Because that does sound like a little bit of the same.
They have a budget. There is a time schedule, but they are trusting you through the process as you go forward.
Got it.
The next one is the doubting. Okay. And this person probably is coming back over the other side and they're like, he said 2 weeks, but I don't really think he means 2 weeks. And he said it's going to cost $100,000, but I'm going to put away 125 just in case. And I got, doing the same. So the things that you're saying, and now that can be, that's them protecting themselves, but there could be this doubtful person can grow to the non-trusting area where they don't trust anything you say, and after every meeting they're going to their computer and they're typing out, asking Google about
free
build
quote
science.
On plumbing.
Yeah. And so they are the doubtful, non-trusting, right? And then the psycho is the other end of the deal. Now the psycho.
So just to run through all of them really quick, we have the lover,
patron,
the truster,
yes,
the doubting,
yeah,
and the crazy, the psycho.
Yeah.
We could make them all, agree in their tenses, but that's okay. We can move on.
Here's the twist in this little plot narrative story.
Sorry, explain the psycho. I cut you off. What is the psycho? Because the doubter seems a little no.
The psycho comes to every meeting ready for a fight. Okay, the psycho feels like they've been wronged. They've been cheated. They are it's a fight. It's a previously doubting customer that has learned that they were right and to doubt whoever their architect was. Yes, and they grow into this enemy, right? They grow into this person that you're just like, I don't even know how we can work together, how we can keep going.
They're kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where, like, right off the bat, they already doubt you. They already kind of like got expectations that you're going to fail. And because they have that preconceived idea, they manifest it through their actions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I definitely had one psycho client. Okay.
Same.
And she,
both only had one?
I only had one. Yeah.
And she was,
and it was a she on my end too.
It was a Karen.
Classic.
Sorry if your name's Karen.
But do better.
The thing that happened was that she was just a troubled soul. And so she would, I would show up for the job. It was a small thing. It was, I was early in my career and I was doing a really cool historic kitchen, historic bathroom at her house. She had just married this guy who was going to be a Snap-on tool or Mac tool distributor. And I don't know, it was probably a $60,000, $80,000 job. Well, I would show up at 10 in the morning and she'd be drinking. And so, and she would just kind of sit around and drinking, kind of looking for something to pick at, right? Yeah. Looking for something to, and I remember, it got to the point where it's like, I don't even want to go over there. And this was still at a point where I was doing most of the work myself. Well, I hired a guy to help me, Kenny Hayes, who is one of my great employees. And the way he handled her was so liberating. Okay. He would just joke and would just laugh his way through the thing. She would say something and he'd go, yeah, like, you know. And I was like, you can say that to what is going on here? I've been scared to death. And Kenny comes in there and just like, this lady's crazy. He goes, I'm not putting up with it. I'm not dealing with it. And we kind of worked our way out of that thing.
Yeah.
And I was, falling down this hill, like, oh crap, what I got to do? I got to keep her from getting mad. I got to keep her from, I was trying to manage her and also do the work, knowing that every cut I made and everything I did was going to be judged.
She would, sorry, I just want to be clear here. You would make it, you're like sitting there at your miter saw, just, that's probably not going to fit. Like that kind of her deal.
Just with the drink. No.
No, it
Not
was
a chance.
It was more, we're bringing the cabinet in and we're fitting it and stuff like that. She's like, that doesn't look right, and you're just like, okay, it was on the shop drawings,
Yeah. So Kenny was right. She doesn't know.
Yeah, we were all. This is all stuff we approved, and she's just like, I don't think this is going to work at all, and you're just like, okay. What am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
He's
I
like,
was
take
young,
another shot.
young in my career. I was young in my career and I was a pleaser, right? I wanted to make sure she was happy. And yet she was not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening?
Well, Kenny came along and he kind of just started joking. And about the third joke, she kind of goes, yeah. And I was like, what just happened here? She liked the pushback that Kenny was giving her and was just kind of, and his kind of, I was probably 30 and he was probably my age now. He's 55.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I'm not putting up with this lady.
Yeah.
Right. And so he just started joking back with her and just kind of poking the bear.
Uh-huh.
And the bear, instead of charging, just kind of went, oh yeah, well, okay. And she waddled off back to the other room, started, drinking in the other room, but wasn't bothering us.
Yeah. She got on YouTube and really just started commenting fervently. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, this is
man, you're killing me. I just imagine
I know.
with the drink like waddle. You said she waddled.
So Richard, what was your Karen like?
Well, it's crazy. This was the lowest income neighborhood we've ever worked in.
Mm-hmm.
The job was maybe like $1,500, $2,000.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of carpentry, some base, casing. She was remodeling. She was kind of she was like a watcher.
Yeah.
So she wasn't holding a drink, but she would just watch everything. And there's a lot of people who watch. Like I had one guy, this is another job, homeowner, and like I would literally be like fitting the base pieces around the wall, and he would like come and like kneel down and like not say a word.
Oh
just,
man.
like, just so focused, like watching me. And I like,
It's like getting in the business.
I had my headphones on. I was like, "Oh, did you say something?" He's like, just like watching. I'm like,
wow.
All right. I was like, I'm just gonna keep listening to this.
Yeah. That's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, watching a little bit, it's in your house, they're there,
Yeah.
but to be like laser
Or to
focused,
kneel down and to get on the level.
Yeah, and it's always like the guys who are like, I would have done this myself. I just don't have the time, So they're just watching because they're trying to learn.
Yeah.
But anyways, this lady, we sprayed 2 doors. They were like double doors to a closet. And I took them out, set up a little booth, sprayed them, and they were dry. And I was carrying them back in. And my tape, I didn't take my tape measure off, and it like scuffed the door.
Uh-huh.
And she flipped out.
Oh,
she
no.
was like, what? Like just freaking out. Like you're gonna have to respray that. I was like, no, I can touch it up with a roller. Like I know how to do that. And she's like, no, you have to respray. I was like, no, I could, trust me, I can roll it.
Yeah.
I can touch it up. Like she was like, no, you're gonna have to respray it. Like don't bring it in here. And I was just like I can touch it up. Like we went back and forth.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was like a 1-day job. We were there like trying to fix that like all night. It was weird. So I ended up being like, all right, whatever. Like, we're just gonna leave. Like, you don't owe me anything. I just want to leave.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, get out of my house. And I was like, okay. So me and John were like getting the tools, like walking in and out, like leaving the job.
Yeah.
And then she closed the door, and I was like, we still have some stuff in there. She's like, well, you're not coming back in my house. I was just like, okay. So I pulled out my phone, and I was like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm calling the cops right now. And she's like I put it on speaker, and they're like 911. I didn't know the police number, so I just called 911, and I was like, can I be transferred to the police station? And she's like, yes, yeah, absolutely. So she transferred, and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, this lady stole my tools.
Oh my God.
And she's like, oh, whatever, just come back in and get your stuff. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, never mind. She's letting me back in. And then they were like, no, we need to know like where you are, because if something happens, they want like a record of it. I was like, no, it's okay. I just hung up.
Yeah.
She let me in. We had like a hammer or something left, but it was just so petty. And
that's so crazy.
One of the things though, I'll point out, like if you're listening to this and you're wanting to know like how to beware of that, it always stood out. She was from New Zealand, and I'll never forget, she said, in New Zealand, everything is better. People here just suck. Like craftsmanship here sucks. And I was like, well, I can prove her wrong, but I couldn't. You know, like she didn't want me to do my rolling touch-up technique. She wanted me to reset up that whole booth, spray everything. Like some people you just cannot make happy. And I would say that is the psycho. You know, you can't, that old phrase, you can't please everyone. She was unpleasable. And that should have been a warning sign, because when I walked in for the estimate, she was like, look what this tile guy did. Look what the painter did. And I was like, I was immature, but looking back at that, I probably would have been like, you're not going to be happy with me either then.
Right.
You know, because I try my best, but if you want perfection, like we're human, you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to scuff that was an accident. I messed it up with my tape measure, but
I think that you got to realize that something I learned early on is that, and we've talked about it before, in the, that book Cheap I talked about, Ellen Rupel Shaw.
oh, she did give me my money though at the end.
Oh, really?
I wanted to say that she did pay me what she owed me.
That's shocking.
Yeah,
to hear that.
So there is a fear, okay, in the customer's eyes that they are not going to win, or they're going to get taken, or they're going to get, they're going to be taken advantage of. And so there's this fear. One of the things she points out in her book is that part of the deal about discount culture, part of the thing is that they feel that they're winning, that they feel that there is that there's this yes, and even though they've driven all over town, spending all kinds of money, to get save $3 on some socks, right? There's a win there, and so I think it's the same thing for these customers, is that there's anxiety and there's fear about success, and just are my friends going to laugh at me, or am I going to get taken advantage of? Am I going to have one of those horror stories that happens? Now, that was a comment. Here's the twist in the whole thing.
Yeah, I wanted to hear this.
Okay. You interrupted me before.
I did. Yeah. I'll take that.
So here's the twist. You, okay, as a craftsman, as a craftsman and business owner, determine which customer you get.
Just by going.
No, not by selecting. Okay. I believe it is like, there's a reason why I had my psycho client, early on in my career. I didn't know very much. Okay. I didn't have the experience to handle her, but I was somewhat knowledgeable, right? I knew the right things to do. I was, definitely honest, but I don't know how talented I was. And so there was anxiety about my skills and about the work that we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think that the more knowledgeable, the more honest, the more talented you are, the more likely you push yourself into, that realm of having clients who are naturally trusting because you're knowledgeable, because you're honest, because you've done these things, and immediately kind of, weed out those other people because, good people are coming after you.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Would you accept her job today? And if you would, what would you do differently?
No, that's a good question. I think that, if you think of that bell curve that we're talking about and these clients on this kind of bell curve of crazy to loving patrons,
gotta love a lover for a client.
So, depending on your skill level, that bell curve moves back and forth or moves around based on the
how they pay
competency that you bring into it. Now, I would have handled that customer very differently, and I doubt she would have chosen us because I would have come in with this professionalism and this like, look, here's the process, here's the bids, here's the numbers, here's the thing, here's how it's going to work, here's the schedule, here's what's going on. And she might have kept drinking, but but there would have been an understanding that brings her this,
yeah,
right. And so the point for the guys out there listening, gals, and anybody that's dealing with customers is that, I'm totally lost.
It's a great point. It's a really good point because anyone is dealing with customers.
No.
So just before you find your point, old man, the one thing that I was curious about is it does seem like a catch-22. Like, so you're saying the solution is raise the bar of your craft, get better, so that you don't have to deal with the psychos. And there is an element to that where, on those entry-level jobs, it sounds like both of you guys just had to do a good job. Like, I had to do a job to bring in some money. So, how do you fight that?
Yeah, I think that, if you're dealing with, if the last 10 jobs you've done, okay, 5 of them were crazy clients, okay, look at yourself, okay, and look at what you're bringing to the table as opposed to, if you're one of those guys who's always saying, I got the craziest clients, I got the worst clients.
It's probably you.
It's probably you, right?
You're probably the drinking with the client,
Yeah. Or something's happening. Something's happening that is causing them to, become non-trusting, become doubtful, become, questioning, and start looking at everything you do and kind of going, wait a minute,
Yeah.
And sometimes you can start out with a very trusting client, but because of your actions on the job, you turn them into a doubtful or psycho client, right? Because they've gotten into a situation where they're scrambling to try to get out of it. And, you have caused this distrust and caused this problem.
Well, craftspeople, listen up. It's advice from an apprentice time. So I work with parents a lot, and moms specifically are like the classic tiger mom across the board. I would argue that there is not a single mom who put in the wrong setting or put in the right setting is not like full on mama bear. I'm going to protect my kiddos.
Yeah.
So me being a 24-year-old guy, started out of my job.
This was 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
5 years ago. So, basically the way that it works is there's like a men's director and a chapter director who's overseeing me. And basically my boss, the chapter director, quit. And so I got promoted into his position pretty quick. At the same time,
within 6 months.
Within 6 months. My women's director at the same time, another month after that, her husband got a new job in Austin. So she moves away from Denver. So I'm alone. I was previously a men's director, now promoted to chapter director, and now I'm doing the job of 3 people as one. So excuses aside, because I was really bad at this part at the beginning, but just put in a new position, I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't communicate as well to parents as I did, or as I do now with my team, where we've got like a dedicated social media plan, we've got a dedicated, emails that go out weekly, schedules, all sorts of stuff that is just like built in system wise.
So the things are
communication.
Communication
Communication is huge. Yeah. Communication is key. when we brought my wife on, my wife is the communicator of our family. I'm really bad at it. She's really great at it. And that's a key feature that has distinguished the moms at the beginning going, what are we doing? Like, what is going on here? Into, we love this. Like, we love what we're doing because...
And you've got the same analogy where you can have this psycho mom, and all of a sudden she becomes a cheerleader for your ministry,
for your business,
or your business, or whatever it is. All because you have communicated differently, and that's kind of my point. Is that you determine sometimes whether these customers are going to be patrons or...
But I would argue
crazy.
My craziest moms, like the ones that were coming at me like, what is going on? When is this? What are we doing? And I'm like, I posted it like 3 weeks ago. It's no big deal. It's out there. But now, like, our communication plan is entirely different. Like, we, at the end of every week, hand out a handout to every mom that's like, this is exactly what we talked about. These are the 3 questions that you can now ask at home. And then here's all the events that we've got for the rest of the month. Here you go. And it just, a concept feeding the monkey, right?
I think that maybe, to your point, the most important thing we've done in the last few years is change our communication method. And tried to be as open book and transparent as possible, so that the customer, isn't blindsided. They know what's happening next. They know what the schedule is. Hey, we should be in by August. We should, the next 2 months look like this. Communication is huge. And
it's also,
and what you were saying, we think on the building side, well, everybody understands that, drywall takes 2 weeks, or drywall going to take a month,
right?
And they don't know, and they can get like, what is going on? How long do these drywall guys need to be here?
Well, I think it's kind of similar to what you were talking about starting your YouTube channel. That's essentially just communication, like full transparency. This is what I know. This is what I do.
Yeah, that was a huge...
That had probably established a ton of credibility for you.
Yeah, so most of my clients after my YouTube channel kind of took off were lovers.
Yeah.
No, they really were. They were...
Wow.
They knew the reputation. They kind of knew what they were getting. And I can honestly say we never let them down. I think that one experience that I told you about earlier was the worst experience I ever had. And if you're new and you're listening to this and you're scared about the psychos, don't even worry about it, because 99% of people are trusting, patrons. They want something crafted well. They want to get it done, and they're not out to get you.
I wanted to understand how YouTube's helped you and built you and helped you build your business. Talking about one, not only giving clients a, oh, I know him now and I've watched him, but also just marketing and everything else.
I think the biggest thing is the knowing. Like, they feel like they know you. Yeah. Like, whenever you follow somebody, you kind of feel like you know them, or you listen to their music or watch their movies. You kind of like, yeah, I kind of got a feeling of how Jim Carrey is,
It's called a parasocial relationship.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And, person's putting their personality out there online. And you feel like you know them. You feel like, oh, yeah, I know what Richard did on his house. I know how he built, and so you're like...
Well, you kind of do know me.
Yeah.
Like, the way I present myself in the videos is kind of exactly how I am.
It is, yeah.
I just joke around, have fun, and try to work. So essentially, they do know me,
But the parasocial part of it is they know you, but you don't know them. So whenever you meet, there's a whole video on like why it could potentially be harmful to people who like meet, especially kids who meet their heroes that they know from online, and then they're like, we're like friends, and
he's just like, sign out,
get out of here.
So going back to, is the customer always right? Now, after we've framed it in this thing, that these different things, the customer's not always right. Okay.
Well, I would actually argue the opposite. It seems like the customer is always right, because you guys are I guess there's part of it where it's like you guys know more than the customer knows. I'm probably on the same level as the customer. But the thing that we are saying is, if you get a psycho client, or if you get 5 psycho clients in a row, it is probably because you are not doing your job So the customer is a good pulse or an indicator of like how well you're communicating and how well you're presenting.
I would say so. Yeah, and I guess there's a point to the customer is always right. There's some truth to that. Like if they say, no, I want that, exactly how it has in the picture. And I try to talk them down to like another way. And they're like, that's fine. I just want it the way I want it.
Yeah.
I guess you're right because you're the one paying for it. Would you agree with that?
I do. And in that sense, the customer is right? The customer, we work for them, we serve them, if they want it, purple, then we're going to do it purple. But where I would say they're not right is where I would say, that we have to be the professionals. What we've been talking about that Dan was even bringing up yesterday when we were talking to him is that there is we are the professionals in this situation, in this relationship. And, what I've talked you off the cliff of just, what are you doing? Why are you, putting up plastic? Why are you doing these things? And you're like, yeah. Okay. And it emboldened you, I think, a little bit to just say, I do know a lot more than them. I am the expert.
Well, what it did too was it kind of made me want to know more because I'm like, and I'll be honest, like we've had people on the podcast who kind of said, like you just brought up Dan, he said it's a tragedy that people look at carpenters and tradesmen as like a second class.
Look down on it.
And I've kind of looked at myself like that sometimes. Like throughout my career, I'm like, man, like why can't I just be like the people I'm working for? Like the customers and their suits. Like the grass is always greener on the other side,
It's always greener.
But you kind of just put yourself in that position. Like, man, how could that be or whatever? But when you told me that stuff, it made me want to be like, you know what? This is a professional thing. There's more to it than just slapping up some trim. Like it goes deeper than that.
It's a great long tradition of beauty and skill and competency and and history in our craft that there's plenty to be proud of and plenty to Dan was listing off all those people that in his company, from the logistics person to the estimator to the accountant to we can do all of that. And so and I think this is important, and what we're bringing up is realize how you see yourself. One way you might always be, getting into those doubtful, distrusting client is because you show up at the job, hat in hand, kind of like, well, what would you like me to do? Well,
just
okay.
kicking rocks.
Yeah. And so as opposed to showing up going, I'm the professional here. How can I help you? I want to make your house more beautiful. Let's go do something together.
And I can make your house more beautiful.
And I can.
Where would you like me to start?
No.
Right?
Sorry
I mean, so part of the twist in this whole thing when you describe that is that's part of it, is our attitude that we bring into this thing is going to determine whether that client is trusting or not.
Yeah, you're like, I know freaking classical architecture. Dang it. You're going to listen to me.
Well, the other big thing about it is I think you do have to build a base of experience, and communication really can make up a lot for
sure.
Maybe not having the expertise. Like I would say, if you're
absolutely
in a place where you're like, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm pretty good at figuring stuff out. And so like it'll get done. I think even just communicating something like, hey, I can do this job and I will do this job and I'm going to do my best.
Well, humility, I think, and not so much humility. Like you said, you're just hat in hand. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But,
that's almost
just,
shame.
The phrase, your ego is not your amigo. That one where it's like, you don't have to be some cocky guy coming in there. We had an AC guy come to our house a couple months ago, and he was just trying to sell us a new system so hard, and he was so cocky. But he was just spouting off all these HVAC terms, and I could tell he was just trying to sell me, and that's not my personality. I'm just like, what?
Well, but the good thing is that we are customers. When an AC guy comes and shows up, we are customers. So what about that guy frustrated you, or it was just arrogance maybe, or
arrogant cockiness, just like, you need to sign up for our monthly thing. The monthly thing is like $8 a month, and what it covers is this and this. Here, I can call him right now and get you signed up, and like hands me the phone. I haven't said a word.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So you definitely don't want to be that guy. You want to have confidence.
That is a sales tactic. That's like a TikTok or Instagram sales tactic where you just, here, I'm going to call him right now. And then the person's like,
yeah. The thing that really did it was he said, oh, this system's old. This refrigerant, they don't even make that refrigerant anymore. You're going to have to get, it's like I don't know what the terms are, but it's like a R something refrigerant.
Yeah.
And then my wife's cousin is a HVAC technician too.
Yeah.
So she called him and was like, is that true? He says on here, like, they don't make this one. And he's like, we use that all the time. Like, but he gave us an estimate for like $15,000 new system.
Yeah.
So that's cocky.
Yeah.
But you want to have confidence, which has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the client here, one thing we probably should address is the money. I am guilty of this where, some guy shows up and let's say we're doing landscaping at my house. We need some, bushes or something done, I'll sometimes, I'll have a number.
Do you want to admit to this?
I'll have a number in my head, but I won't share that number with him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, it's not like I go, I got $10,000 to spend on this thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm waiting to see where he's going to land, right? He's, where he's going to be. And so we can kind of learn from ourselves of how we need to act and react. And because we know our clients are probably doing the same thing to us.
Yeah.
I mean, we do ask, like, what is your budget for this project? A lot. And I'm not sure we get a straight answer ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought of something too that I went to consult on this job in Weatherford, and it was pretty bad. The lady was basically saying, like, we had this restoration company come in because the house flooded or whatever, and they're redoing all the trim. Mm-hmm. I saw your videos, and like, I think you know what you're doing. And can you come look at this? So I went out there, and it was really bad. And the guy, like the guy who
wrong
did it,
moldings or like badly executed.
They put him in upside down.
Both. I'm kicking myself for not taking pictures, but the reason I didn't is because I walked in, met her, shook her hand. She was super nice, like trusting. You could tell right off the bat she was trusting, which may have been to her detriment. Which people have those nightmare stories, and this is kind of one of them, where the trim was bad, like nothing lined up. There was like wainscot panels on a single wall. One was this big, one not kidding, one was this big, and there was 3 sizes on one wall. And I was just like, but the kicker is the two guys who did it, or the one carpenter kid that did it, he was standing right there, and then his boss was standing right there. And then so we're all there. It's this awkward situation.
That is awkward.
And she's like, so what do you think about this? And I'm like, do they have to be here? I didn't say that, but I'm like, what do I do? Like, this is such a weird thing. So
man, that is uncomfortable.
I was like, I just said it. I was like, these panels need to all be the same size. Like, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And she was like, what about this molding here? Is this supposed to be right here? And the older guy who was there, who was like the boss, he was like, I told you that's the molding that goes there. And then I was like, whoa, who are you?
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, just I bet that guy is saying like, this lady's so crazy, but it's like, no, you are crazy. You're I was there 10 minutes because I had my family in the car. I just stopped by to look at it. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time there.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was really weird. But my point to that is that, you may be the problem,
Well, and I think that there has to be I think that's a great story. And I think it's an example of the contractor I don't ever want to be, that says you can't afford that, or you don't know, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I told you that goes there.
Yeah, I told you that goes there. and that there's an arrogance sometimes that happens with in our profession that, oh, the homeowner doesn't know anything, shut up, I'll take care of it, it'll be fine. And, you can end up with crazy stories and jobs like that you show up to, and who's really at fault there, right? I mean, probably the contractor.
Definitely
Well, the other thing is really funny. The way that you've said you don't know anything versus I've heard you talk about it as like, we need to educate our customers. We need to educate our clients. That's such a different mentality, right? Of you don't know anything instead of, hey, let me educate you. Let me show you some things. And then you make the decision.
Would you tell that to your kid?
Right.
Just shut up. You don't know anything. It's like,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah. That's a good analogy.
And they kind of are a kid in a sense, because they're starting off like not know. Maybe they know, customers are even on different levels. Like some know a lot and some don't know much of anything, honestly. But that, like you always say, it's our job to educate these people.
Well, and that education never stops, right? I mean, we've just started implementing a sheet that we have at the beginning of the job that explains who does what, right? And so we had a client come in, he kind of looking around and go like, what's going on? Like what's happening? Right? And so we gave him this sheet that says, okay, we're the builder, we're handling these things. The landscape designer is going to handle this. The architect's going to handle this. The interior designer is going to handle this. And it was just this, oh, okay. Yeah. Kind of, and it was clear that he was so confused. And it's like, well, are these people even talking? Do we know? And, been doing this for 30 years. And so I don't, it's second nature for me. But to remember that client, and he's going to spend a lot of money with us. I mean, millions of dollars, right? And he just wanted to understand, and that communication, that education, that, open, hey, here's what's going to happen. Yeah. Here's what the next 6 months, here's what the next 2 years look like. And this is what we're trying to share. I think it does, that communication is huge.
Right. And I think communication and respect too. Yeah. Because the way that guy communicated to that lady, in my experience, was like, I told you that goes there. I like dropped my jaw. I was like, you just talk to her like that? How
did you get out of that?
I said, well, I brought up my family. I was like, well, my wife and kids are in the car, so I guess, was there anything else? And she was like, oh, no, that's, they're waiting for you. Go ahead. And she said, thank you for your time.
But you told her like, no, it doesn't go there. That's not right. Or
so I pointed out the things that were wrong. Yeah. And there's probably more I could have pointed out, but it was just so awkward that I just kind of pointed out like the big glaring things, like the wainscot panels. But disrespect is, to me, the worst thing. Like when I tell my kids, like, you can tell me anything, but don't disrespect me. Just talk to me with respect. Yeah. And they don't, like, because they're kids. We're teaching them. Right. But as a tradesman or a contractor, my biggest piece of advice from this whole thing is just respect. Like, even if an issue comes up, deal with it in a respectful way. Like, hey, you did this wrong. Okay, well, let's see how we can fix that. Apologize, right. And sometimes eat the cost on it because you want to make it right. And I can honestly say we haven't had any dissatisfied customers. Yeah.
So I want to go back to guys listening out there. What do they do if they have a number of if they have a track record of challenging customers, right? The first thing we'd recommend is
look at yourself.
Look at yourself, right? I mean, look at the systems. How well are you communicating? There's got to be a point of reflection that you're looking at yourself going, well, I understand why they said that. I understand what they're thinking there. I understand their frustration. For us, it used to be, the budget, right? The budget was always, more than we said it was going to be. Well, I mean, changes have been made, just things that happen. You open the wall, you find things that weren't there. That's another huge thing that we're getting better at, but communicating those changes when they happen, because, they get to the end of the job. They said, gosh, when we started this was going to be $1 million. Now it's $2 million. What's going on? And you're like, well, remember and we wouldn't even have to have that conversation at the end if we had along the way say, we were at 1 million, but now we're at 1,000,001 because, this happened. And now we're at 1,000,002 because you wanted to add that garden. And, now we're, and that seems like why wouldn't everybody do that? But everybody doesn't do that. I mean, it's just, we're trying to get better at that communication, budget, schedule.
It's also kind of like swallowing a bunch of little hard pills along the way rather than swallowing one giant
open heart surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Another, I think, really good resource. We've talked about it a lot on the show, but then even just to take it from a business perspective, Bob Iger has like one of those masterclass things. I don't know, everyone gets the ads for those, but in the masterclass, he talks about like how he goes about making deals with people. And he's one of the guys who's responsible for some of the biggest corporate buyouts in history with Lucasfilms, all this crap.
This is the Disney CEO.
It's the Disney CEO, yeah. So he says it wants to be a win for both parties. And so if both parties do not come out of the deal as like, this is awesome, I think it's a problem. And so to your point, you always say, we want to serve the client. We want to, make the best work. You say that a lot as well, is making the best, doing our best job. I think it's true, right? We say, hey, this is a fair price that we've come up with. This is where we're at. And we just want to do the best thing that we can do. And if you have that mentality, it's clearly a win for both parties. And you're not going to be walking away from a deal where you feel like you've upset the person who you're working for. And they're like, well, it was fair. It was clear. It was, he was open-handed with me. I want to go back. Like, I want to call him in, 3 years when we want to add an addition on our house. I want to call him,
Yeah, there's I think the other thing I want to make sure we stress, or one thing that I think has helped me is talent and knowledge, right? Communication is huge. It may be the most important thing, but the next level of that, and the reason we get the clients we get, is because of how much I know, because of the talent level of our craftsmen and the kind of work that we do. And so, please don't, to your story, Richard, be that guy that you can continue to do crap work and, continue to expect people to hire you when you're not serving them in a talented and knowledgeable way. I mean, just the way he treated that customer is just like, look, pal, you don't know what you're doing, evidently. And so, there's sometimes people, when they fall back into this industry and they're a framer or they're trim carpenter, what they are seeing is what they think is the world. And it's just like, they've got this very narrow sliver and just, well, that's how you do trim. And it's just like, you know what? Shut up. Okay. Cause here's really the world of trim, and you're working in this little narrow thing. Don't talk to me about, and so I just want to encourage people to raise their talent level, raise their knowledge level. I mean, you're starting to collect books now, and that is raising your game, and ultimately helps you find that trusting patron client why do they trust you? Because you know so much.
Well, the funny thing about that too is, like, we just did that Palladian window thing, and I got all these comments I was telling you about. PVC, should have used PVC. It's just so many over those couple videos. But it just reminds me of what you said, because people are living in this world that's only PVC. So my last video, I just went on a rant and destroyed all PVC. No, I'm just kidding. But
Richard McMurray destroys PVC.
But I just said the opinion. I talked to you about why you're using these sapele woods and stuff, and why you guys believe in them. And I'm like, that's awesome. That makes sense. The whole plastic thing of the PVC, it's just not the best fit for. And then there was a lot of people on my side who said, like, yeah, putting PVC, there were so many funny comments. I want to read them, but putting PVC on that house would have been like putting a Volkswagen sticker on a Rolls Royce or something. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good analogy.
Well, I mean, but that PVC is a product of the last, 15, 20 years. And they're saying that's the answer.
Yeah.
No, there's thousands of years of work gone on in our
great
trade.
Building.
Yeah.
Long-lasting
Without
building.
PVC, trust me, PVC is not the answer, right?
It is a answer. It is a potential solution.
This is a potential solution.
But it is not the best one.
I want to talk about one last comment. have you ever fired a client? And so, I have talked to a bunch of designers who have fired clients. I don't think I've ever fired a client. But I think it's ballsy, and I think it's appropriate sometimes when some of these, when that distrusting psycho client isn't willing to do it. It's something that I've never done, but to the point where you just go, you know what, this isn't going to work, and being able to call that quick and being able to get out of it, I think it's a big deal.
Sounds like you almost did that with the New Zealand lady. New Zealand's Karen.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Karen.
Yeah, I did. And the funny thing is, as crazy as that experience was, she called me later that night too and was like, I'm really sorry about that whole thing. And I was like, wow. I said, you know what? I'm sorry too. And it like worked itself out, but that was the craziest thing.
I've don't have a lot of clients, but we in the ministry I work with, we have like 40 volunteer leaders, and we have a really high bar for who can become a leader. And so when I joined this thing, there were eight total leaders. And I was really like, we need people, like we've got kids in small groups, and I didn't know what to do, because I was like, I just need to hire anyone who's willing. And now it definitely has raised our standard as a whole. Whenever we said, oh, I'm so sorry, you want to work with us, you want to give your time, like work for free for us. But we can't have you on board because you're not living up to the standard that we want you to be, or you're not up to the standard that we're looking for. And it's such a weird concept. It feels so backwards when you're in the moment and you're like, I can't say no to this. Like I can't. So
the comparison is you're firing a client?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you have a client who's not working with the vision, like, I don't know, you are king historical architecture guy. If you went into with a person who is like, I'm really itching to do a French style home combined with an English style home with all aspects of modernity, like sprinkled throughout it, you'd go, that's not what my vision is. Like, I don't like building a home that's a McMansion. I'm sorry, I'm not going to work for you. And that raises your standard of excellence, I feel like, because that client is going to go talk to 80 of his friends and say, he wouldn't build this house. He said he needed to build it historically and accurately, and I can't believe that. Then someone who's like, well, I want to build a house right, hears that and goes, oh, I want to work with that guy.
I think that's an example of defining yourself in the market so that you kind of find the right clients, right? And so, someone wanted to build a hay bale house, right? Yeah. That probably wouldn't be me.
Okay.
Well, it's a way of building that has some historic precedent, but I have no experience. I wouldn't know the first thing to do. So, anyway, very thermally efficient.
Shipping container, you wouldn't do that?
You looked into
probably
it.
Not.
You looked into modular homes, right?
Yeah. No.
How to build them historically?
A historical shipping container.
Yeah, a shipping container is kind of I don't bring a lot of expertise to that, right?
Yes.
And so if some client really wanted to do it and that we'd liked working with them, then I'd do it. But I'm not the shipping container guy.
So what would you say, at what point do you fire a client? Is it at the initial meeting, you're like, this just isn't going to work, or halfway through
these
it?
people, the people that have done it describe it to me as, they get into the project and something's happened. Okay. That client that originally you worked with and said, this will be fun, has turned negative and has turned distrusting. And so, if we had a client that did that to us, like they stopped believing the vision, they stopped believing what I was saying, it would be like, what, maybe it's best if we just kind of go our separate ways.
And that would be the firing right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so look, you're unhappy, you're, distrustful of what's going on. We still hold on to this thing. Why don't we just go our separate ways? And it doesn't have to be dramatic as you're fired, like Donald Trump or something.
You're fired.
But it is a acceptance that like this probably ain't going to work going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never had to do that, by the way.
Never.
No. But I think our jobs were always so small that we just kind of push through them.
Yeah, these were to just work it out.
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks at the most. So it's like suffer for 2 weeks, you get it over with, and you know, it's over.
Right.
Years are years.
Yeah.
Right. So overall, running it back, we've got the patron. That's the person who loves you, wants to work with you. Doesn't matter the time, doesn't matter the cost. Let's make something awesome happen together.
That's a very small percentage, but yes, they're out there.
And so you're talking about this bell curve. We never really plotted them. So we've got the patron at the minute end.
They're 1%.
And then the psycho, Karen, on the other end. And then as we go up, they're the truster and the distruster are up there as well.
The doubtful.
Yeah, the patron and the psycho are both 1% each.
Right.
I would say.
And the patron and the doubtful, 90.
They're
54,
the majority,
54.
and if you look at it that way, that you can drive them. You know, your skill set and your communication, your stuff is going to drive them. You know, to be trusting or non-trusting. You know, based on what you're communicating, what you're doing, how knowledgeable you are.
Yeah.
Well,
that makes a lot of sense. That's and then just more key takeaways from me that I had was communication is key. Communication is a big part of it, and then as you build up your brand, that brings more expertise into the picture.
The last thing I want to say is that just hit on that respect point so much because it's so important to me. I don't care if it's the lowest guy on the totem pole or the homeowner themselves.
Yeah.
I try to respect everyone on the job, like to the best of my ability, you know? And if you're the contractor that's disrespectful to the homeowner, which is the worst, you're going to sway them to be crazy. You're going to sway them to not trust you. Everything can be solved with communication and respect. I truly believe that.
I'm really just finding out what it means to you.
What's that?
RESPECT.
It's a word I really care about. Yeah, it's one of my core values, actually.
And I would say my takeaway is that knowledge and trust and talent, right? The reason I think we can do the work that we do is because I study harder. I know more. I love the historic precedent, and that knowledge base, I think, wins us customers and trust, and that patron type relationship, because they feel like they're hiring the expert to come in and help them accomplish this dream or this goal, and it's only because I love it and I've studied it, more than anybody else.
You made yourself valuable.
Yeah.
You can't buy that mind. You have to hire it, And to get that mind, you can't read a book. You got to read hundreds of books.
Right. Yeah. It's not just one.
Yeah.
How to get a mind of Brent Hull book.
That's your next book.
Cloning yourself. Well,
we already did that with the AI.
Yeah.
we don't need them anymore.
No. Brent Hull is already, well, hey, thank you for watching the Passion for Craft podcast. If you've made it to this point in the podcast, we would love to hear from you guys about a great story that you've had with a customer. Potentially a terrible one. Those are typically funnier than the others, but any stories,
what you learned.
Yep, and big takeaways that you learned. Put that in the comments. We'd love to read those. Also, give us a follow on YouTube. Give us subscribe on YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Somehow, that's the number one thing that dictates whether or not a podcast is good. Just how many people can 5-star a podcast. So, thanks again for watching. And if you're not in the Patreon, we'd love to see you there. Really awesome community of people on our Discord, and just kind of sharing about craft and cool building things. So. Thanks for watching. Buildsmanship. Yeah, high quality buildsmanship.